This is a bad deal. A very, very bad deal. It's the deal of the century for Iran. It's a very dangerous and bad deal for peace and the international community.
Well, that was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Pretty clear how he felt when he heard that the U.S. may be close to a deal now on Iran's nuclear program. And what our next guest reported this morning won't make Israel feel any better. Eli Lake is the Daily Beast senior national security correspondent and a contributing editor for the New Republic. Eli, good to see you again. And so what you've reported today is that not only may we be on the precipice of a deal, but that there was a secret deal in place for some time now that saw our administration doing what with Iran?
Well, what it basically is that the Treasury Department blacklists individuals, entities, cargo vessels that are violating the international sanctions. It's how Iran tries to have a lifeline to the international economy. In the 6 weeks before the presidential elections in June, there were more than 100 such entities who were blacklisted. Since Rouhani's election in June, there have only been 6 individuals and 4 front companies, and experts say this is evidence that there has been the beginning of a kind of loosening of financial pressure in order to create the space that Obama thinks he needs in order to have successful negotiations.
Which I guess, okay, so they would, I guess they didn't comment to you reading your article, but they might defend themselves by saying we had to lay the foundation, we had to sort of grease the wheels a little bit to open up the possibility of a deal, and now we may have one.
Well, what the Treasury Department spokesman who we spoke to did say was that they believe that they continue to do the enforcement element of sanctions, which is the levying of fines and working on kind of financial penalty agreements for companies that had already been designated. But the key thing is that the designation process, the process of identifying the people and the entities that Iran uses to bust those sanctions, has really slowed down. That's the way, in the terms of a kind of cat and mouse game, that the U.S. government tries to stop Iran from busting the sanctions that have been imposed.
But what does that tell us? So what is, I mean, what's the people saying? Look, he's trying to get a deal, so he was basically throwing them a bone. Even though he was telling us he was being tough with sanctions, he was easing them a little bit. So what's the import of the story? Why do we care?
Well, I think what it shows is that the administration believes that it kind of can turn on and turn off how it approaches these things with Iran. It saw what they thought was an opening, and they're seriously negotiating it right now. To be sure, there are still lots of sanctions on Iran that have not yet been lifted, but Iran has in some ways adjusted to its outlaw status in the international economy, and it's done so by kind of creating these workarounds. So going after those workarounds through this designation process is extremely important.
It's been an important tool.
And the fact that they kind of started to, begin to loosen up on that, I think in some ways, the hope is from the White House is that it will, be a sign of good faith for the Iranians, and that they will in turn maybe give a little bit on their nuclear program.
But of course the risk is that now if we don't reach a deal, we've had 4+ months of not doing the things we thought were necessary in order to put the stranglehold on them financially. So I guess we'll be placed in an interesting position if this falls apart.
Yes, I think so. I think the other important point here is that will this create a kind of follow the leader effect where the world sees the United States beginning to kind of loosen this process, and will that mean that other countries in turn will also do that, and you'll see the sanctions regime fall apart, and you'll see less pressure on the Iranian economy if these negotiations do not produce a desired outcome.
All right, Eli Lake, thank you, sir.
Thank you.